Final guest is the only person below White Holiday in the Comicsgate phone book. It's my favorite failed clone of Peter Sammetti. The YouTube how you doing, Conrad? Welcome to the show.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to WyzGyz Entertainment. This is your host, Wyman. We are joined today by a very special guest, Monte Moore. How are you doing, man?
I'm great out here in wonderful Colorado today. It's beautiful.
Oh my gosh. I've got a little family who lives in Colorado. Does your area get much snow during winter?
In the winter, it still mostly stays up in the mountains. That's kind of our secret that most people don't know about is that it doesn't stay down in town as much because it just melts off quick because we're so high.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
In my city, we're closer to a mile closer to the sun, so our snow melts quickly.
There you go. There you go. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
First time. Hope it's the first of many.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if you're familiar or if you had any time to take a look at my channel, but it's customary to try and take a deeper dive and learn more about the creator. Would you do the honor and share with us your quote-unquote origin story? In other words, what kinds of stuff did you grow up with when you were a kid? Was it cartoons, movies, comic books, TV shows? And what were the major milestones in your life that led you to becoming your own self-published creator?
Yeah, absolutely. My background's probably quite a bit different than nearly everybody in the comic book industry, in that I actually grew up on a cattle ranch.
Oh,
30,000 acre cattle ranch in Idaho.
Dang, 30,000 acres.
Yeah, it was big, and it was, a lot of hard work. So during the summers when I was younger, we didn't have access to TV. We couldn't get TV because we were 30 miles from town. And I know this sounds like a funny joke, uphill both ways and whatever, but it was 30 miles of dirt road to where our ranch was in Idaho. And so we didn't get TV. So all summer long, you worked on the ranch, and it was all cowboy stuff. And so you're reading like comics, going into town and getting a couple comics from the local grocery store was kind of a cool big deal. And my mom really didn't want us to have a lot of superhero comics, right? Pretty conservative type family upbringing. And so, we usually had to trade comics with our friends when we were back in town for the school year, because you didn't stay out on the ranch during the school year. So we got, Archie and Richie Rich and Veronica and, the sort of what my mom thought would be sort of violent comics. So we would then take our comics and trade and read everybody else's. So that was how I would be, exposed to Thor and the Avengers and later on X-Men. And that was a cool big deal. So, typical Saturday morning cartoons. I was born in 1971, so we grew up with Super Friends in the mornings and things like that. But I was a big D&D player.
Oh.
And we had an Atari, and so we could play games on the TV and whatnot. But a lot of my creative outlet was fantasy art. And so still do have all the Dungeons and Dragons books. And so that was a real creative outlet to get together and do things like that with your friends. So I guess at an early age, we thought about, making characters, right? And a character that has these, powers and abilities. And later on, we played other games in addition to Dungeons and Dragons. So there was Villains and Vigilantes, Car Wars, Top Secret, James Bond. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had its own game, and you could do you could have a character that had porcupine quills and shoot them off at other people. And if you think about it, a lot of that kind of creativity is very much like creating a comic book character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, otherworldly, has powers, something other than the mundane life that most of us kind of lead.
Yeah.
So, so that was, you know, all pretty typical as far as, you know, exposure to comics, played a lot of role-playing games, big fan of going to the arcade and playing, you know, Double Dragon and Space Ace and Dragon's Lair and all these kinds of things at the arcade that was in town. And then my family moved to Colorado in '88. And by the time I was 16, I was really into art. And that was actually when I decided to do art for a living. And there was literally a singular moment. I can remember having a conversation with a couple of upperclassmen that were sitting at the art table that we shared. There was like 4 artists to a table. And my whole life, since I was like, I don't know, 6 years old or so, I was going to be a doctor. And I was, we had a name. So one of my namesakes in my family was somebody I wasn't related to, but was also named Monte. And I was also kind of named for him. And he was a great friend of the family. And he was a doctor. And so I thought, oh, well, I'm named for a doctor. I should be a doctor when I grow up.
All right.
But I hadn't really given a lot of thought to what goes into being a doctor, the school and the blood and the stress and the drama and all that. It just sounded like it was a great way to make a living. And so when I was 16 and having this conversation with my friends at the art table, you know, I was like, wow, you know, I wonder if I should not be a doctor and I should be an artist instead. And I literally made the decision, went home, was at dinner with the family that night, and I said, I have an announcement. And they're like, wow, it's kind of formal, you know, like, really? Like, put the fork down, like, okay, you know, what's your announcement? And I said, I think I want to be an artist for a living. And my parents, to their credit, did not skip a beat one bit and said, we think that's a great idea. That's something you're very passionate about. And my mom had an artistic background and had been later in life had taken a bunch of graphic design classes to help our family business, which was natural and organic meats. So my dad was kind of a pioneer in the mid 80s in natural and organic. And we went on to supply the U.S. Olympic team and things like that with organic beef. And so anyway, they said, yes, we think you should be an artist and we think you should go to school. You have to pay for it yourself, but if you run into trouble, let us know and, you know, we'll try to help you out. And I have 3 older brothers, and all 3 of my brothers, we all went to college. We all paid for it ourselves. And, you know, it teaches people independence and, you know, working through college and things like that. So I got a degree from Colorado State University in north of Denver here. And in the degree's in fine art, but the concentration is graphic design and illustration.
Ooh, all right.
But there was a very fateful thing that happened along the way when I was in college that really dictated where I am today. And one of my best friends in college and today, his name's Steve Oatney, and he's done some work in the industry as well. And he and I were roommates later in college. And one of the things that we liked to do was on Friday or on the weekend, we would go to the local comic book stores.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so Steve was more of a comic book collector and reader than I was, but I still read a lot of the stuff. But I would usually go with him. And even though I didn't buy a lot of comics, I would buy Heavy Metal magazine, any of the art books that would come out from like Louis Arroyo or Joe Jusko. And most of the posters that we had in our apartment that we shared was, I can remember one of them was the She-Hulk lifting the weights on the beach with like one finger. And that was a Joe Jusko piece. And so it was a lot of pinup art. It was a lot of comics. It was Playboy artists like Dennis Mukai, Patrick Nagel. And Steve worked at a framing shop too. So we had like, everything was really nicely framed. But like if we got a Dave Stevens calendar, we'd take out all the pages and we'd frame them all and put them up all over the apartment. So, most of the influences ended up being comic book artists and fantasy and pinup artists. So some of my big influences were Hajime Soriyama, Louis Arroyo, Boris Vallejo, Frazetta, all of these, a lot of people that I would consider sort of modern masters of illustration. So we would go there on a regular basis. And so my love of that genre grew. And then as it happened, my senior year, Steve had already graduated, and I went down to the comic store just by myself to check out, new cool stuff. And I lived down near there at the time, and it was called Fusion Comics. And Fusion Comics had a manager, his name was Rob, and Rob and I were talking about art, and he knew the kind of stuff I bought. I would buy an Olivia print or, things like that, because he knew I was an airbrush guy. And he's like, hey, so you do a lot of airbrushing, huh? And I was like, yeah, it's kind of my jam. There's not many people who do it anymore, and it's not taught at the school. I actually was the only one who ever did instruction to other students.
Oh, wow.
It had like a full rig and everything like that. I would even go to the student center and paint T-shirts and hats and jackets, anything to make money with art to help pay for school. So I was kind of known as the airbrush guy. And so Rob tells me and says, hey, I got these two friends, they're brothers, and they're producing their own comic. And they've asked me to be the editor for it. And they plan to, publish it and then take it to a show and promote it. And I was like, okay, wow, cool. And he said, we need somebody to color the front cover. And so the two brothers, Gabe and Chachi Hernandez, were working on a project, and it was called Lords of Light. And the basic premise was that the gods of each of the different pantheons, like Greek and Norse and Egyptian, each decided to imbue one of their descendants with powers to help mankind, because we were screwing up the world. And they had taken a hiatus for, a couple thousand years, and they weren't, sort of meddling in man's affairs again. So anyway, I got hired to do the cover, paint the cover, a couple $100 or something maybe. But the good news is we all became friends. And so we kind of started hanging out more, and Gabe went to CSU just like I did. And the more we became friends and being part of the project, it was like, well, I was the only guy who was hired to do something on the project. So I really wasn't part of the team because everybody else was just volunteering. And Chachi was pulling double duty as both inker, and he was using dyes to do the interior coloring.
Ooh.
And it was the first time he'd ever done colors before. And so at one time in a fit of enthusiasm, I said, well, what if we started over on the colors and I airbrushed the entire book for free, just as part of the team? We're all in this together. We're self-publishing. And so we started over on the colors. It took me several months, including over spring break and Christmas. And looking back on it, it's insane what my approach was, because rather than using small brushes or colored pencils and a little bit of airbrush, I was literally airbrushing every figure and every person and every face. And I didn't have a lot of hand painting skills, and my drawing skills aren't near what they are today. And so that was my recourse. Like I thought, okay, well, this is awesome. Now, the good news is, we got it done. We got it published. And it probably taught me to be a even better airbrush artist, because you really learn hand control. The bad news is three things happened that were strikes against us that made the comic not particularly successful. And those are industry bad timing things. So one, it was supposed to be solicited in Diamond as the Lords of Light.
All right.
And I don't know, John Zelazny wrote a story in the 60s called The Lord of the Light. and some jackwagon out there owned the rights to it. And when it was solicited, they or found out it was coming out, because we got a couple little write-ups like, hey, these guys are making this comic. And so we got a cease and desist letter that said you couldn't be the Lords of the Light. So we had to change the name of our comic to just Lords. And then when it was solicited in Diamond, they mis-solicited it as it being a black and white comic. Now, black and white comics do not sell a quarter of what a regular full color comic. And I had just spent all this time producing it.
Yeah.
So it did come out in color, but our pre-orders kind of stunk, 300 copies maybe instead of 1,500. So that put the kibosh on us. And then we went to our very first San Diego Comic-Con. This is 1993. So all 5 of us, including Rob and our writer, Mark, everybody, we piled in my dad's conversion van with 3,000 comics in the back. I mean, this thing was dragging Axel.
But you had room for all those comics plus all the staff?
Five guys in a conversion minivan, and all the comics stacked up to the ceiling in the back in boxes. And we had a small press table at San Diego, and we're all a bunch of greenhorns, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We're all between 19 and 22. I was the oldest of the group. Actually, Rob, the editor, was. So we had a hotel. We do all that. We get exposed to our first Comic-Con. Comic-Con back then, for those who didn't know, was pretty much nerds only. It was collectors, and it was comics, and there had not been an invasion by Hollywood yet, right? So no Walking Dead. There was a few movies that were being made, but even Marvel movies back then were the stinky Marvel movies.
Yeah.
We hadn't even come out with the Daredevil level and stuff like that, let alone X-Men, which changed the world perception and opened the door to mass market, even though you'd had successful Batman and Superman movies.
Right.
So none of that had happened yet. So it was comics people only. There's very few women and girls went to the show.
Mm-hmm.
There's no term like cosplay. They were just folks who were wearing a t-shirt that was like Mage or Shazam.
Right.
So believe it or not, I think we still ended up selling about 1,000 copies at the show. We met some other friends that we have remained friends with in the industry, like Matt Haley and Gene Ha and other folks. But another thing that happened was this was the death knell of Lords and our comics company, which is called Legend Comics. And at that exact same time, Dark Horse decided to come out with an imprint that had an Easter Island logo head, and it was called Legend. So we stand in line as a bunch of newbies. We have our comic, and we go see John Byrne, who's doing a signing over at Dark Horse and was part of that group or whatever. And we're like, hey, here's our comic, We decided to call our company Legend Comics. Do you think it's a problem? You guys are Legend. We're Legend Comics. He's like, oh, I really wouldn't worry about it. You guys are kind of small, whatever. 2 months later, get another letter, cease and desist. You guys can't be Legend Comics because we own the imprint and the name Legend. And so it was just like, the third time the axe falls on you, it's like, oh my God, the comics industry is out to get us. We were not feeling very welcome.
Didn't you guys come out with your imprint first though? Or
I think it was simultaneously, but because we didn't go out and actually pay to have something copyright and trademarked.
Right.
And they were, they had lawyers, so we did not.
Right.
So we did not put up a fight. We just sort of slowly, slunk back to Colorado. And it was still a great time. So for the next couple of years, we still went. We still had our back issues. We were working on an issue too. And basically what we ended up deciding to do was saying, well, let's work for other people and see if we can get hired to do other projects. And So I worked for the family business as a graphic designer, doing stuff for the natural organic beef industry. And I had a studio there. And as a side gig, my side hustle, in a few years, I started getting my first work as a freelance cover artist. And so my very first freelance cover was for Lightning Comics for the Helena title. This was about the time that the first kind of wave of like bad girl art kind of hit. So Helena, Purgatory, Lady Death was popular. It's still early 90s. Ballistic Comics had an imprint. Jim Ballant was doing his art. And so, there was kind of this popular bad girl phase. But you hadn't seen all of like the girl art take off as far as characters. Marvel and DC didn't, their female characters were not the popular ones, but people like J. Scott Campbell and others started popularizing female-led titles, Danger Girl and Gen 13 and stuff like that. So, you start to see an industry shift. So over the next, 10 years, I mostly did cover art, and always for Indian smaller titles, Chaos Comics, Lightning, did a couple of Vampirella titles for Harris, back when Harris had it. Later on, Dynamite, things like that. So to this day, believe it or not, although I've done licensed work for both Marvel and DC on things like the Versus card game or T-shirts for a convention, trading cards, and right now I'm the artist for The Mandalorian for Thomas Kincaid Studios, and they're a big Star Wars licensee. But believe it or not, to this day, I have still never yet done a Marvel or DC piece of cover art for a comic. But I've done everything else in the industry. So in 1998, I went to my first gaming convention, and I told you I was a big gamer. So getting to go to Gen Con, which is the equivalent of San Diego Comic-Con, but smaller. At the time, they had about 30 or 40,000 attendees. And I started getting work right away in gaming. Card art was huge. So,
yeah, that's true.
So right about that time, within just a couple years, I started out with, a couple book covers and working for smaller publishers. But then once I got my first work for Wizards of the Coast, it was Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. And I was working for 3 or 4 art directors at one time at Wizards of the Coast. And the computer coloring had already sort of come along and become a big part of the comics industry. But I'm a traditional artist, and I like drawing and painting. I don't. I have a Cintiq sitting here next to me. I have drawing tablets. I have all the tech. But I decided I didn't want to be a comic book colorist because I love painting so much. And so for about 10 years, most of my work, 98 to about 08 or so, maybe 2010, a lot of it was the gaming industry. And I even had my own small gaming company, and we put out 3 or 4 games.
Oh, wow, really?
And I would say that I have to be thankful that Brian Pulido in 2014 got the rights back to Lady Death. It had been with Avatar and a few other publishers and stuff. And so I started doing, at the time, up until then, I was maybe only doing 1 or 2 covers a year. Again, smaller publishers. But really, the ever-growing fan base for Lady Death and Brian getting his flagship character back, I started doing covers for him in 2014. And then I guess I had already been doing some for like Naughty and Nice and some of the Zenescope products for direct retailer incentives. So Grimm Fairy Tales, Little Mermaid, Penny for Your Soul, mostly all sexy. Some of them were variant, some of them were topless. And so I was, known as a pinup guy, fully painted. But there was very few publishers who were doing fully painted covers 10, 12 years ago. It wasn't until you saw the popularity swing back about 5 or 6 years ago, that you had great artists like Lucio Perillo and a lot of the Italian artists really help repopularize a truly painted cover. Because I would go to some of these comics publishers and say, hey, here's my work, here's my extensive client list. And they'd be like, yeah, we're not really doing painted covers. Right. But now you look at the art of Mark Brooks and, just a lot of people who are doing traditional art, and you're getting a lot more painted covers, which is great. And it helps the popularity of artists like myself as well.
I love painted covers. When you say painted, are you referring to acrylics, oils, that kind of stuff?
Whatever the project entails, I do both. Most of my covers for Lady Death and lots of others are typically mixed media acrylics. And so my typical methodology right now is I would turn in a sketch, it would get approved, and then I would do the first layer in colored pencil because drawing is one of my strong points. And then I'll blend those color layers with both airbrush and markers. And then I'll come back with hand-painted acrylics and colored pencils to do all the highlights and bring everything back. Because sometimes the airbrush gives a soft edge feel to certain things.
Yeah.
So it's great for skin tones, explosions, fire, and soft backgrounds. But you don't want that bleedy, you don't want it to look like t-shirt art. And so that's when you kind of tighten everything back up for the final art. So, for example, I know one of the things that we're talking about in this is, so this is an original piece of art. This is for Loco Hero.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
And thank you. And so this is the actual original. It's not painted. You can see a little bit of the marker even bleeds through on the back.
Oh, wow.
So we have 2 campaigns going right now for Loco Hero, and the Indiegogo is a re-release of issue number 1. And in issue number 1, we have a cover called the Honor Bound cover. And these, both the Honor Bound cover and this one, go to benefit Operation Second Chance, which is the veterans organization that works out of Walter Reed Hospital in DC, and it helps veterans as they transition. So you can see a little bit of the sheen like coming off the art. So that's the colored pencil. That's the reflective part. But in the markers and in the background, that's more airbrush and pencil. And this particular piece here, which is called Soldier On, this is a cover that you can get on Kickstarter. And this was commissioned from Loco Hero number 1 by one of our backers. And it's a multi-$1,000 tier. They get the original art. And this is her son in the background who served in the Army.
Oh, damn.
He struggled with PTSD, and unfortunately, he did take his own life.
Oh.
And that's something that a lot of our veterans today struggle with.
Yep.
And one of the stories, one of the cultural issues in Loco Hero, my main character, Brina Hernandez, is an Army vet. And so she lives on the street. She's homeless. She actually doesn't have any powers. So the title is called Loco Hero. Yep. And after a hit to the head, she thinks she's a superhero. So she goes to the donations bin. She cobbles together her outfit. You can see here she's got ski goggles on her head, a Halloween mask, a jazzercise style suit, almost from the 80s, right? With the kind of, leotard with the stripes. Her pads on her knees and elbows are rollerblade pads. And so she goes out and she fights crime. And so if you think of her like Bruce Wayne, right? Batman, but take away all of the resources, all of the support. She's going out and doing what he's doing, and he's got Nightcrawler and, the Batmobile and Alfred and all the money in the world.
Right.
And she's homeless and lives on the street, but she's trying to defend where she lives, which is the slums. She volunteers at the local shelter and stuff. But she is under the mistaken impression that the slimeball developer who wants to level the slums and put in a shopping mall is actually building a super villain headquarters. So she's trying to keep the slums from being leveled because she thinks he's going to build a supervillain headquarters. But when she goes into fight mode and she's trying to stop the street thugs from clearing out the homeless in the area, she gets confused in her head, and she might look at a guy who's a dirtbag. And if she thinks that guy in her head appears like a ninja, then she might envision herself as a samurai. There's a great page in the book, and she's fighting these three guys, and she says, if you be the villains, then I am the hero come to stand against you. And the street guys are like, what's this bitch talking about? Like, she's crazy. Because to them, they have no idea what she's referencing to. But in the comic, the readers get to see the art transition to what's in her head. And so a street fight turns into a fight among ninjas and a samurai. Or it could be a Roman gladiator or a space girl or a jungle scene. And because all of this action, the real life action is taking place, but in her head, the way the visuals look get to change. And that's the unique part about Loco Hero is if I have Paolo Pantalena or Lucho Perillo or Mike DeBalfo do a cover and it appears as a jungle girl or any one of these other settings, my character is actually experiencing this. It's not just a what if to like sell those comics. So those stories and those elements actually happen in the book.
Nice. She's
doing all the right things for the wrong reasons. Oh, I should go over the comments. I see people.
Welcome, What About?
Says hello.
Ahoy, one and all. Welcome, Genuine Comics. Hello.
Hi, Genuine, and What About? What's up? Let us know if you have any questions.
So if it's not a spoiler, and she has that moment where she views herself as a samurai, is it presumed that she's like carrying some sort of weapon like a baseball bat?
Exactly.
All right. As opposed to a samurai sword.
Well, and so, that kind of stuff can transition, and most of the stuff that she has is found object stuff. She doesn't carry a gun. Now, as I mentioned, she is a veteran. She was in she fought in Afghanistan, and her squad was wiped out. So she deals with PTSD, and she has a lot of survivor's guilt. Thank you, Genuine Comics. We appreciate that. But she's also super capable. So in the first and second issue, you learn a little bit about her background. And she is a badass. She's not a housewife who decides to be a superhero. She's a black belt her whole life. Her dad, who was from El Salvador, she wanted to be capable. And so she went into the military so her brother could go to law school. And I was like, well, both of you can't go to college. And so she's like, I'll go into the Army and I'll help pay for you to go to school. Her younger brother. And so she is a badass. She can fight and whoop ass on, most kind of low level, street thugs kind of stuff. But, there might be a flash where she appears as a samurai and she might be holding a sword, and it comes back to the regular fight. She may or may not be holding something, but it's more of, hey, we see her working. Now, one of the cool things, if you go back to the other panel, so this is a fight one, that right there. So she's, this is a cool panel. You can't see the dialogue in this particular one, but here's her out on the street. And in the book, there's another young boy who's down here at the bottom. His name's Eli, and he's also in the shelter. And he's reading a book that I just called The Crusader. It's kind of like a Batman kind of story.
All right.
And so he's almost becomes the narrator, and he might say, our hero moved like a cat among the night in the slums of the heartbeat of the city. And so he doesn't know that she's out fighting crime and he's reading this book, and he in a way becomes the narrator. And so I tie together, and these panels go back and forth, how the hero is going out and doing heroic things. And he's, you know, he's got a shirt tied around his back as his cape, and maybe he's got a mask that he made himself. And so it's really become this fun part where I loop back in actual comics. So he's reading comics, and at one point you see him holding a G.I. Joe. Mm-hmm. And, you know, somebody says, well, you know, those guys aren't real. And the kid goes, of course they're real. Like, they have their own movie. These guys are heroes, you know, and he goes, they don't even need powers. Mm-hmm. So it's like I'm tying all these little kind of things together, saying, well, you know, there's also ways that our military and our cops and things like that, they're going out and they're doing these things, and they don't have powers.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, there's some subtle cultural issues and messages in there that I enjoy as somebody who's a supporter of the military. All three of my cousins served in various branches. My grandfather was an admiral in World War II and had his own aircraft carrier. So I grew up in a family that's surrounded with military and police service. Now, here in this panel that you can see, this is where she's first putting together her outfit. And she's kind of taking stuff from the donation bin. And in that scene, she makes reference to Batman and Bruce Wayne. And she says, oh, well, you know, I need some things to protect me. But then she puts on like football pads or a big motorcycle helmet. And she goes, no, I can't move. I need to be able to, you know, move and be stealthy. So she disregards that. So the reason why her outfit is, you know, maybe more revealing is she wants it to be able to where she can move very quickly. But in her brain, she might think that ski goggles are night vision. And she's like, yeah, this is going to help me see better at night, you know, because that's part of her psychosis a little bit.
Mm-hmm. How long has this concept been in your mind? How long has it been in development?
So it's an interesting story. It was born at San Diego Comic-Con in 2016. I had lunch with a friend of mine who's a fellow filmmaker. I also do work in the film industry. And he and I had lunch during the setup day. And I had already made a couple of indie film projects, and so had he. And I said, if you were going to do an indie film project, you know, what would you do? Would you do low budget horror like everybody else? And he said, no, I think I'd try to find a way to do low budget superhero. And I was like, wow, really? Okay. That's a little bit tricky because most of the time you have special effects, right? Superheroes fly around and lightning bolts and stuff. But there had been a few things like the Super and Kick-Ass had already come out, I think, or was that year. And you're like, okay, there's some people without powers, but he was augmented in a way of not feeling pain. He could just take the punishment. So that kind of is rolling around in my brain. What would I do if I was going to create a low budget superhero in a way? Later that night, coming back from dinner at the Hilton, which is right next to the convention center, and I was with, I'm trying to remember if I was actually I was by myself because I had a meeting with some friends, and it was super cool the way it happened, right? So I don't know if you've ever been to Comic-Con, big, long convention center, you know, in front. And coming down, I'm walking this way, and coming down on my left is 4 or 5 cosplayers, and they're dressed for the masquerade ball, right? So full cosplay, superheroes. Exact same time, a woman walking the same direction as me, pushing a shopping cart, and she's clearly struggling with her reality. She's having a very loud argument with herself. And she's in her own mind, right? And she's like, ah, rah, rah, and I was like, whoa, you know, kind of freaked me out. And literally at that exact same time, I came up with the idea of, what if my superhero, who's a woman and lives on the street, goes out and dresses like the people on the left, like a superhero, but she has no powers. And she thinks she's a superhero. So you take the psychosis and where this woman lives on the right, but you make her beautiful and capable and dresses like the ones on the left when she's fighting crime. And that's how it was born. So on the drive home, my buddy who had gone out to help me with the booth, I was like, man, you need to drive because I'm taking notes. And so Wayne and I talked back and forth on how this would develop. And there in the story, I reiterate some of this same idea. And I started doing early drawings. And look, the idea for the title came on that drive. And when I came up with the idea of Loco as the crazy, and oh my God, Loco hero, it flows, it's nice, it's short, it rhymes. And I said, I'm going to make my character a Latina so that Loco hero ties in better with the character. And so everything just kind of fell into place really with the project. So my very first artist worked on it for a couple of years and ran into a bunch of personal problems and stuff. He was from Brazil. And so for 3 or 4 years, the project didn't make a lot of progress. Then about a year before we launched it, maybe a year and a half, I switched artists, started over with Donnie Hadawaha. And I found a local colorist here in town who had just come out of art school. His name's Sean Callahan. And we started making fast progress, like turning in pages. I'm like, this is great. And rather than making it a 22-page story, I decided to make it a graphic novel, make it bigger, and learn from Brian Polito when he launches his Lady Death projects. They're almost always a bigger book, right? 48 pages, you can get into the character more. And so I was already reaching out to other friends in the fall of the previous year, Ryan Kincaid, Marat Michaels, Jesse Witchman, and others who I had done covers for, saying, hey, bro, you want to do a cover for me? I'm going to do my first comic. So we started trading cover art. You do a cover for me, I'll do a cover for you.
Okay, all right.
And I was getting ready to launch the Kickstarter in like February, March, and here comes COVID. And I'm like, man, this does not seem the right time to launch a Kickstarter and say, hey, give me money. Here's my project, which I had invested. I had paid all my artists out of my own pocket. So I wasn't waiting for the Kickstarter to pay them.
Right.
And so I'd been paying them all along the way. And so I went on a podcast. It was right after I got back from a 3-month art show in Arizona. And Kevin Gouliet of NSC TV, he also has his own podcast. It's called Comic Roddery. And he said, hey, why don't you come on our podcast and, talk about, what you're up to. And it wasn't specifically about Loco Hero because I wasn't going to launch the campaign. And there were several other independent artists on there. Some of them were from the US, some were over in England. And during the conversation, they were saying there's less projects on Kickstarter, and we think the comics community is going to want to support creators like yourself because they're also not getting their normal fix, their normal content, coming out of comic book stores because a lot of stuff was shut up, right? Even comic stores were closed. Right. And so on that podcast, much like yours, they talked me into, they said, no, we'll help you get the word out, man. We'll help you promote the project. So do it. So I get off the podcast. I called Josh, who works for me here in the studio. And I was like, Josh, I know you've already been working on the Kickstarter. We're not quite done yet, but we need to launch in like 4 days. Because I also didn't want to have my Kickstarter run when there were some other really big ones going. So I don't want to run mine during when a Lady Death is going on because I also share a lot of fans from the Lady Death universe. And so we decided we needed to fit in between, and our window was right then because Brian was going to launch a campaign in like 5 weeks. And so we're like, we got to get our 4-week window in right now. But we'd already been building the campaign. The art was done. And actually, most of the book was lettered. I mean, I was ready to go. So we said, screw it. We dropped it in the canon and we launched it. And this was a year ago, this last year. And it did fantastic on Kickstarter. I had been doing Kickstarters since 2013.
Oh, okay.
They had been for art books. And usually my art book campaigns would do 15 to 20,000, real respectable. covered all the costs, got your pre-sales out there. But I'd usually only have about 100, 200 backers, tops. And so to have Loco Hero have 650 backers and hit just barely crest the 50,000 mark was a little bit life-changing for me. Not because that's profit. That's not profit. People think, oh, you made $50,000 on your book. No. You make 5 or 10%. It's really what your margin is.
After
right?
all your costs, yeah.
Just to pull the curtain back. Normally, if you're doing a project like this, 50,000, there's quite a good chance that it'll cost you 30 to 40,000 in costs. You got to print them. You got to ship 600. Packages and things like that. So having a shipping bill that's $6,000 and a printing bill that's $10,000 and they add up. So don't let people tell you that's the artists are just like drowning in money. So anyway, it was still successful. It really showed me that I needed to ramp up production of my stories. Blood and Bullets, which was my vampire Western, was already in production and being produced. But I started reaching out to other people that I know in the industry for covers and interiors and colors and saying, okay, well, I'm 50 years old now. I've been in the industry almost 30 years. I want to wear that publisher hat and still do art and still do covers. And like I said, I'm doing work for Mandalorian. But I'm turning down most of the smaller other jobs that aren't on the docket so that I can focus on writing and publishing.
Okay. All right.
So right now, among the various stories that I have 10 projects in production.
Holy moly.
Yep. And so that would include ongoing series that I've already published, like Loco Hero or Blood and Bullets. But I'm also doing I'll call it a dark anthology series called The Midnight Cafe. And it'll have stories, supernatural, horror, Sasquatch, alien, stuff, kind of a Tales from the Crypt, weird tales, amazing stories, Twilight Zone kind of feel. And so I have 3 or 4 artists already working on stories for that. There's the Honor Bound cover. So we decided to bring the Honor Bound cover back for our Indiegogo campaign.
Yay.
So that is still raising money for Operation Second Chance. And in the Independent Creator Awards last year, that cover won Cover of the Year. And I was a runner-up for Indie Publisher of the Year and Indie Character of the Year. And I was only runner-up to Coffin Comics and Lady Death. So that's pretty damn good, considering they've got 25 years on top of me.
Nice. That's quite an honor.
Thank you.
And this was a cover you did, right?
It is. And so I like this cover a lot. I love this cover, actually. So that was a pencil drawing. And then I added the digital colors over the top. And then the background shows interior panels. And I like it when my interior artists, who are very good, also get not only their own art, on the cover and the inside. So they always get 1 or 2 covers themselves.
Oh.
So on Loco Hero 1, they had their art on 3 covers.
Cool.
Right? Sometimes interior artists, man, the variant covers and the hotshot covers, a lot of time, it can steal the thunder.
Right.
So these are 4 brand new variant covers. These were not released last year.
Oh.
These are all brand new. So people who support the Indiegogo campaign can get covers that weren't released on the Kickstarter. These are exclusive to Indiegogo. So on the upper left, we have Shikari, who's done a really nice piece showing the kind of fractured nature of the character, sort of beauty and then kind of more edgy. And then on the right, Paolo Pantalena, his first cover for me. And most of these covers show her in her outfit rather than how she visualizes herself. And there's a sister cover, a companion cover to Paolo's over on the Kickstarter because he did 2 variant color versions. So this one is the night scene. And so it's called Nightbringer. And the other scene is all colored like daylight and sunset, and it's called Lightbringer. And so for those folks who want to support both the Indiegogo and the Kickstarter, you can get both of his as a matching set. And then on the lower bottom, again, I did a cover trade with Jamie Tyndall, who's known for White Widow, and I Make Boys Cry, and a bunch of other titles he does. And so this was a cover that he did for me as well. And so those are all exclusives. And then the artist who first started Loco Hero and doing the interiors wasn't able to complete the project, but this drawing on the lower right by Leo Gondam was one of his very, very first drawings of the character back in 2015. And I have a new colorist who I really like named Federico Siak, and he's done a number of color covers for me, and so I had him color that piece.
Nice.
And then I think in the what I call the art core covers, if you scroll, it's either up or down, you'll see the covers that are by me. There we go. And so these 4 covers are all hand-drawn sketch covers that I did for backers of Loco Hero 1. So I had six backers who got an upper tier level, right? They get the original hand-drawn cover. And so all 4 of those went to various backers. And then I had one of them digitally colored by Sanju, the one on the upper left called Lead the Way. And so that shows her more in her military kind of setting with the Hummers in the background.
Yep.
You know, a memory of when she was overseas. You can see she's got her tattoo there that says Army of One with a little star above it.
Nice.
And then the one on the right is I call Terminate Her, and it's more of one of her hallucinations, like the Terminators are coming to get her, and why does my arm look like it's robotic? Am I a Terminator? So I was trying to combine a little bit of pop culture with a sexy cover.
Right.
In the storyline, there's a lot of pop culture references and movie quotes because she watched a lot of movies with her dad. And so when she's out on the prowl and she's doing stuff, you might hear lines from, Goonies or Die Hard or Star Wars or whatever. And they're just little Easter eggs that are laced throughout.
Nice.
So those are all original covers that people then got the actual art on the cover. And for me, it was unique. It was the first time I've ever got to do a sketch cover on my own title.
Oh, that is sweet.
Yeah,
That's
thank
really
you.
cool. Amanda B, welcome. Just popping in. I like the art on the thumbnail for the stream.
Oh, thank you.
I don't see any sequentials. Am I missing them on the campaign?
I
don't remember seeing any.
I thought I had asked Josh to add those back in. I know that there's a couple in the upper pictures. Did he not get that added in?
I did see some at the very, very top.
So there's some of the sequential. You can see the drawn pages and then a colored page there on the left.
All right.
And then if you go up a little higher, so there's one of the sequential pages there. And then click through those pages, and those are all sequentials. So that's her getting hit in the back of the head. She was trying to save her friend who was being sort of accosted in the alley because they're trying to clear out the slums, the bad guys are, because they're trying to redevelop it. And so she gets hit in the back of the head with a pipe. And so there's a nice butt-kicking shot there, the interior art. And the bad guy in his limo as he's, doing bad guy lurker stuff. So I'm trying to combine, a modern looking story that has digital colors and great art. But you can also tell that the art, that there's a classic and a simple sense to it, right? Like that shot of the car in the rain and it's splashing off. It's very reminiscent of a Batman kind of a story. And so, I'm trying to combine both the then and the now, right? Because most people who are reading comics today, right, they're that 25 to 65, right? Maybe started comics in the golden age and things like that, or even older or Silver Age. I wanted to appeal to everybody. And I'm not trying to beat anybody over the head with, cultural or timely issues. My goal is to tell a great story that people connect with. And we got some great reviews. And I'm not sure if you scroll down to the very top part where I'm talking about this story, is there any testimonials in there? Scroll back down.
The idea, the hero, the journey, the new book, stretch goals, the perks.
I tried not to make it where it got too long.
Right.
There's a bunch of testimonials over on our Kickstarter of people who read the first issue.
Right.
Wow, I really engaged with the character, and Monte's writing was natural, and we're really happy. We're wanting to support the second issue. So we have some backers from the Kickstarter who have come over to the Indiegogo to complete their collection. And one of the other things that I really like about the Indiegogo campaign is we're doing this volume as a perfect bound. So rather than the saddle stitch on the side, we're going to keep our Indiegogo books as a perfect bound, and people can collect one or the other or both. And the bigger books, when you get into a graphic novel, I will say the perfect bound is a gorgeous book, and it doesn't end up with the kind of hump and the staple that you get in a just traditional saddle stitch comic.
Right. Let's play this trailer here.
Okay. I think it's me talking about the project.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monte Moore. Welcome to the Maverick Art Studio, where today we are bringing you Loco Hero. It's a passion project of mine, and it's the first time I've ever done a creator-owned, self-published comics project. So the idea came to me in 2014 when I was at the San Diego Comic-Con, and I was moving along in front of the convention center. And on the one side of me, a group of cosplayers dressed as superheroes. And on the other side, I was passed by a woman clearly living on the street and struggling with mental health issues. And this genesis of this idea came to me. What if I was to combine those two realities, both a little bit skewed, if you will, and bring together the idea of a woman, a character who thought she was a superhero. The story of Brina Hernandez is one of a woman born of an immigrant father, but also raised very patriotically. She had a love for our country, and so she does go into the Army. And when her squad is destroyed, she comes out of the Army. She's a bit of a broken woman, and she's dealing with PTSD and survivor's guilt. And like a lot of our veterans, unfortunately, she ends up living on the streets. And when she takes a head trauma, it causes a stress-induced dissociative disorder that compels her to be a hero. And her reality is skewed, and so she might not always see the world the same way that we do. And it creates a wonderful opportunity for both the art and the storytelling for this unique character.
So that's a little bit of the background on it.
Nice. Let's see. So, their chat's conversating.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Look at how cool Monte looks in that video.
I try. It's hard. I'm 50 now. It's hard to be cool.
It's just like wine. You just get better with age, right?
I hope so.
So let's check out the tiers, the perks, real quick. I noticed there's no feature tier. Were you planning on putting one in?
What do you mean a featured tier?
Well, people have different interpretations on how they want to use it, but it's not necessarily the cheapest tier. It's not necessarily the most expensive, but it's like a combination of products that kind of gives you the gist, the feel of it. If you were to buy just one perk, you might get one. You might get.
If you scroll down, there's some other tiers that should have, like, you get a print and you get a book and you can choose. So those are the Rockstar editions. There's the hollow foil. So there should be some that combine a few others that are farther down. And you are able to get prints as well.
What's cool about the feature tiers? Sometimes people don't want to. I mean, there are some people who want to thoroughly dig into it and learn everything they can about a campaign, and others they want it. They like what they see. They want to support you, and but they don't necessarily have the time or want to take the time to look at all the tiers.
Right.
So if there's a featured tier, that will be their go-to, and they'll just snag it up real quick.
And is the featured tier, does it always show up at the top as like the first one?
Yeah,
okay.
it'll
Maybe
appear.
I'll add one of those in there.
So Loco Hero Digital, Loco Hero #1 Digital Edition. Oh, I meant to ask. You said that this. Let me see. So it originated on Kickstarter. This is a reprinting on Indiegogo.
Mm-hmm.
Is it considered like a first edition, or is it now a second edition?
I guess technically this would be the second edition. We call it the perfect edition. It's not the first printing, but it is unique in that it's perfect bound and it has different covers. I still do have some first edition that when you're doing fulfillment on a big project like this, well, big for me, you always overprint by 10 or 20%. Mm-hmm. And so we just did a new update to my website, which is called Maverick Arts or Mav Arts. And so we're going to make it more of a store for comics and prints and things like that. So just this week, we started taking some of the first edition books, and, they're either the same price or maybe slightly more than they were last year. And we might have 5 copies of one or 10 of another, and, making those available to people. So, there isn't a big secondary scout market that I've seen, but I haven't gone and looked for Loco Hero on eBay because it's not something I really have time for. And people are welcome to sell their products for whatever they want or can get for them. Sure. So if they're out there and they're asking higher prices for them, I guess it's all the better for me because that means it's desirable.
Yep, for sure. The next one is Loco Hero #1 cover art print.
So, some people, they like more of the art, and they they're not comics readers and things. So they can choose, one of the cover art prints if their favorite artist is Paolo or Jamie Tyndall. Hey, great. It's not a big investment. A couple of bucks, they can get that. And it shows their support. But maybe they already backed the Kickstarter, or like I said, they're more of art rather than comics. So we try to have a little bit for everybody.
Nice. Loco Hero #1 Art Core Edition.
So that's the art team or any of the covers that are from me. And so they can choose between that or the Rockstar editions, which are the variant cover artists like Paolo and Jamie and Shikari. Those are the Rockstar editions. So those are my variant cover artists.
So when you pick up one of these tiers, does it present you with a drop down where you select which artist?
Yeah, at the end of the campaign, since we can't do it in the actual this part, there will be a drop down menu in either a CrowdOx or a backer kit survey, and you'll say, "Oh, I want the Paolo Pantalena," and/or do they have an opportunity to do an add-on, meaning, "Oh, I'd also like to get a print."
Oh, okay. Because usually I spend most of my time on Indiegogo. Mm-hmm. And when I back in campaigns, some of them will give you a drop down where you can select which artist cover you want or what print you want. And then there's also you can make use of the add-on feature. So if you don't quite find the combination of swag and books that you're wanting, then you can add them on individually and like a la carte, if you will.
Yeah, I think probably because this is our first Indiegogo campaign and it does work a little bit differently than Kickstarter. We're probably just working out the bugs to make sure it's we're probably not to perfect optimum efficiency yet, but we hope to make future campaigns as easy as possible for everybody to use and support.
Yeah, one of the challenges I experience as a backer sometimes is like I might, at the very moment I'm looking at the campaign, have the money to get one of the bigger packages, but it won't quite have everything I'm looking for. So I'll have to go through the entire process, back the one that has the closest to what I'm looking for, but then have to go back to the beginning and whatever I'm missing.
Right.
So the disadvantage of that is it could mean I'm paying excessive shipping costs because I'm having to go through another round as opposed to everything being consolidated into like one bundle. So we have Local Hero #1 Honor Edition.
Right. So that's the honor bound, and that's the one that goes to support the veterans.
That's nice. Out of curiosity, like how much of it goes towards supporting the veterans? Does like a percentage of every purchase go to that?
Half of every pledge.
Wow.
So nice. So the thing is if it's a $25 pledge, that book costs me $8 to produce and print. But if it's a $20 pledge, 10 of it goes to that. So I might only have $2 or $4 left over after that pledge that goes into my paying for artists and stuff like that. But the lion's share of it goes to them. And last year, just on the Loco Hero campaign, we sent a check for $2,500.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Loco Hero #1 Holofoil Edition. Oh, cool. Holofoil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've had good experience, especially with me being an artist, writer, and I know that there's fewer of those in the industry, but we like the different textured and holofoil covers and things like that as well.
Yeah.
Hey, we just got a new contribution. I saw an Indiegogo.
Back in 103.
Right on. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that.
Thank you for your support.
I got two notifications just now, so we must be over 4,700.
Oh, nice. So we got Loco Hero #1 Texture Edition.
So that's like a linen where it has the cross kind of fibers, and usually the more artistic covers and things like that do well. On my Blood and Bullets campaign, which is a vampire western, we did the pieces that were a little more fine art on the texture that were Native American themed, and they just turned out gorgeous. Nice. We used Artist Express down in Arizona for our printing. And a lot of other indie publishers, Marat, Michaels, Brian Polito, a lot of indie publishers use them, and they package and ship really well. And almost every book that's graded is like a 9.8 or higher.
Oh, man. So they're a full-on fulfillment company.
They are now. They just did our fulfillment for Blood and Bullets. It was the first time we used them. I flew down and signed the books. And then they did the shipping of the 650 packages for me. And, it's a paid service. But that way I can be working with my artists and the next projects. And I don't have to turn into a shipping clerk, which is it's difficult. It's a challenge. It's hard work. It's you got to be super organized. And I'm not the most organized person in the world. And so I had Coffin Comics fulfill one campaign, and then Artist Express did the second, and they're actually only about 6 miles apart. And I spend a fair amount of time in Arizona, so it's easy for me to do signings and all that. And the nice part is when Artist Express is printing, then and you go there and sign, those books don't have to get shipped to someone. They literally get packaged up in the bubble wrap and the stretch goals and all the goodies, and it doesn't have to go anywhere. It's like printed and it's on its way to you. And so it's one less transfer. They don't have to come to my studio, sit around in a studio where things are always moving, and then get packaged up. So there's just less handling of the books.
Huh. So all the extra swag is delivered to Artist Express.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, so it depends on the campaign with what we're doing as far as, stretch goals and stuff like that. And we try to utilize them for stretch goals as well. So trading cards and things like that, they can produce there. But if we're going to do a challenge coin or a poker chip or a keychain, we have to go to somebody else, and then we have it shipped to whoever's doing the fulfillment.
Oh, nice.
And this allows, hopefully, for Maverick Arts as a publisher to grow faster.
Right.
My very first campaign back in 2013, I produced an art book, And I did everything myself, the tape, the wrapping, the shipping, the printing, the making the book, the art. It took me a year to get out the final art and commissions. And I had 44 original pieces of commission art to do, from sketches and remarks and print. So it was a monster undertaking. So now I utilize help.
Gotcha. Wow. Nice. And then we've got here Loco Hero 6-pack.
Yeah, so you're starting to get into some of the tiers where you're getting more of the goodies together. A couple of people I think have picked up Fully Loaded, which gets you all of the various. So you get holofoils, you get the linens, you get all the covers and things like that.
Wow. Nice.
And so we're about to hit, I would say maybe in the next couple of days, if things go well, we'll hit our stretch goal that showed down there, where every backer will get a free 6x9, art print as part of their package as well. So we should be over 4,700 now. I think it was, if you scroll up a little bit. I just saw it a minute ago. Should be right. No, go right there. Yeah. So when we reach 5,000 in funding, all backers will receive a 6x9 cover art mini print.
All right. Nice. At 10,000, we'll add original art pages to the add-on perks. Ooh, cool. When we reach 20K in funding, we'll make a special double-sized edition containing both Loco Hero #1 and Blood and Bullets #1, available as an add-on perk. More to come. I just love puns.
I utilize it to my advantage. It's very useful when you have a last name of Moore. So
yeah. Does your website have Blood and Bullets for sale right now?
It's getting added this next week. So since our fulfillment is now officially done, literally this morning, right before I hopped on here, I was taking all the cover art options and putting them in the folder. And Josh Andrews, who works with me here in the studio, he's handling a lot of the website updates. And I told him, hey, I'll be down in Arizona this next week. I'll pick up the extra books and I'll bring them back and we can add those to the website. And then probably what we will do is in another, I don't know if it'll be 4 or 6 months, we'll probably do an Indiegogo campaign for a Blood and Bullets #1 re-release. Just like we've done with Loco Hero, because there are backers like yourselves who prefer one platform over the other.
Right.
And so what makes me excited about the 100 backers that we have on, I don't know if we're close to 100 or we over 100, we're 90 backers, is that I'm hoping that based on a lot of the names that I see is that they're new backers.
92.
So 92 backers currently. We're on our way to hitting 5,000. Is that those new backers will be exposed to my first works, right? They may not know who Monte Moore is as a writer, or maybe they know me as an artist, but being able to have them be a Montiac, as I like to call them, and a fan of what I do, then I'm able to reach out to everyone in the future through updates or emails and say, hey, I've got a new project, or would you like to support this? Or what kind of, stories do you want to see? And so I get equally excited about a returning backer who says, I like what you do, but that new backer gets me super excited because I'm like, all right, now I have a chance to show what I do as an artist, as a creator, as a publisher.
Absolutely. Man, this looks like a really good project. I'm looking forward to it. And I love the art. Definitely.
Well, you are the first and only Indiegogo podcast that I've ever been invited on. So I appreciate the time and the invitation to expose the project to new backers and fans.
Oh, of course. Yeah. As soon as I heard about it and checked it out, I was like, whoa, this is different.
It is different. And that's another thing that makes me proud. It's not, I think it stands out among a lot of the other projects out there. And even though there are a lot of female-led titles, I think that I'm trying to bring a title that has depth and humor cultural and timeliness issues, yet it's fun and it's sexy and has empowerment and community pride and all these kinds of things together because it fits naturally. It wasn't like I cherry picked a bunch of stuff and said, I'm going to go create a comic. What am I going to do? It just all came and fit into place.
Yeah, you're not forcing some agenda. Everything is organic. And that's what should be done.
It's very organic. And I think that there's a reason why we got 10 or 15 great unsolicited testimonials where people were like, geez, Monte, I wasn't sure what to think. I like your art, but I didn't know if you could write worth a darn. And so to get that feedback just made me feel very fulfilled as an artist and a creator and a writer. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, thank you to everyone who's backed the project so far.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And those who joined our Amanda and our comics, the folks out there, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. If you've already backed it, consider backing again. You might have some family and friends who'd be interested as well.
Yep. And Loco is over on Kickstarter, so you can just look up Loco Hero as well, and you can get both.
Yep. Back it once, back it twice, back it 3 times a lady.
There you go. I like it.
If you haven't had a chance to back it just yet, or you don't have the means to do so, would you consider sharing it all over your social media? It really helps spread the word.
Just as helpful. I ask people to do that all the time. I'm very active on social media, and that's how people like us who are in the trenches, right? We're competing against much bigger industry conglomerates and things like that. So I can tell you it's hard out there in the trenches. So it really takes the combination of the fans and the friends to make this have an audience.
Absolutely. I am going to give you the floor. Would you share with the world how you can be found on social media?
Absolutely. So you can go to Maverick Arts or Mav Arts for short for my website. You can look up my personal name, Monte Michael Moore, for my personal profile. I also do have an artist page, which is Monte M. Moore. You can just follow that page. You don't have to send a friend request. And then there are individual pages on Facebook as well for Loco Hero, Blood and Bullets, some of my other titles. And then on Instagram, I am Mav Arts. And on Twitter, I am Mav Arts Monte. And I'm sure you can find my art on Pinterest. I don't do a lot on TikTok. I posted a couple of how-to videos and stuff, but I really wasn't sure that was my audience. And so I'm primarily on Facebook and Instagram. I do send out some tweets and stuff, but I'm not super active with that. But I am easily able to get a hold of. You can send me messengers through Facebook and email. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter, which has about 5,000 people on it. We send out a weekly to bi-weekly newsletter of what's up with Maverick Art Studio. And you can sign up for that at Mav Arts. At the bottom of the first page, there'll be a form that says subscribe to our newsletter.
Fantastic. Wanted to thank everyone for joining us. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Mark the bell for notifications. Mark or indicate all notifications, so hopefully you receive a word whenever there's a new stream or video. I wanted to also extend a special thanks for all the subs I have now. I'm at 375, slowly working up.
Nice, congrats.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, make sure you send me the link so I can post this out and ask people to check it out and subscribe.
Oh, most definitely. And I wanted to thank everyone in chat for joining us. You guys rock. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Want to thank everyone who watches this on replay. And we shall see you on the next stream.
Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks.
Final guest that is the only person below White Holiday in the Comicsgate phone book. It's my favorite failed clone of Peter Sameti. The YouTube channel. How you doing, Conrad? Welcome to the show.